right, welcome to another edition of the Alden Report. My name is Michael Alden. We are here at Blue Vase Studios in Beverly, Massachusetts. I have a very, very interesting guest. His name is Isaiah Bollinger. Is that correct? Isaiah Bollinger. He is the founder of Trellis, a premier digital marketing agency. Now, my company, Blue Vase Marketing, we do a lot of different things, but I've been very candid about what we do. We're not the best at digital marketing, so I'm real excited to talk to him about what he does, how he does it, and how he's been successful. Isaiah, thanks for being my guest.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Really,
and I would actually like to preface that as we do a lot of digital strategy and marketing, but to clarify, we actually focus heavily on the design and software and implementation of the actual website. So
all right.
I would say we were even more pushed towards the web design side of the marketing spectrum.
Also something that I'm not very good at. So again, I'm still interested in talking to you. So what I like to ask entrepreneurs like yourself, Isaiah, is, again, a series of questions, and then again, we'll kind of take it from there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah,
First question I like to ask people, it's kind of a broad question, but how do you define success?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't think anyone can easily answer that, but I think for myself personally, it's feeling accomplished and proud of the work that I've done. So, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a monetary goal, but obviously, like everyone, I can be influenced from a monetary perspective.
Sure.
But I think it's definitely feeling proud and accomplished from the work that I've done, and also putting myself in a position to have future success or potential future success. So I think it's not just about the immediate short-term success. It's putting myself in a position to, grow to be something better than what I am right now. So I think that's important to myself as well.
Sure, it's about kind of the struggle and the growing it and building it and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily the end result, but it's the whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like to always have kind of something to progress towards. I think
Sure.
if I had some sort of simple end result as defined by success, I don't think I'd be very satisfied with that because, I wouldn't have anything to move on to. So.
Sure. Classic entrepreneur mentality. As a young entrepreneur who's grown his business, what do you find, or what has been your biggest professional obstacle, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a bunch, but I would say that the biggest was finding the right team of people to work with. The company started Trellis. We provide really at this point enterprise e-commerce and web design solutions and marketing solutions to some fairly large businesses. I mean, not necessarily all Fortune 500, but some solid mid-sized businesses.
Sure.
It's pretty complex, and to do that, it was not something I could do on my own. I needed some people that were even more technical than myself, and I didn't have the financial backing, so I kind of had to build a team of people that were willing to kind of think long term.
Sure.
And that was definitely the hardest obstacle,
Right.
was finding those people. It took me, I didn't start with those people. I started with some other people that didn't work out, and it took me a little while to get those right people in place.
Now, how long have you been in business?
So technically I started in April of 2012, so almost 4 years now. But our existing tax ID has only been around for about 3 years, so
Okay.
I guess it depends on how. I've been doing this for 4 years, but the existing company, I would say, is more like 3 years old.
Okay. Education. Again, people talk a little bit differently and have different opinions. What is your view or opinion on traditional education? Is it needed for business success?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's some elements of traditional education that are important, just the understanding the foundations of, basic things like, English language and math principles and things like that come into play in almost daily life. But I think the traditional education system has, become a little bit obsolete in a lot of ways, and I think they're going to have to adjust. I mean, some of these online learning platforms and systems, I think, provide a lot more business value. In fact, we don't even really care about where you went to college, to be honest, in the interviews. We have pretty specific interviews. We've worked really hard to find the right type of people, and because the higher education system, in my opinion, doesn't really provide exactly what we're looking for. We
Right.
can't necessarily use that as an indicator of whether they're a good employee or not.
So that's an interesting answer. So in your business, for what you do, what do you look for? Other than that, maybe the technical aspect. Is there a personality trait? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely, obviously, the technical side, depending on the position. Not everyone in the company is per se technical, but for those positions that are technical, there's very specific technical questions. But overall, from a personality trait, we're really looking for someone that's thinking long term, willing to work, go the extra mile, just to, put their own name and stamp on something that they built, a website they built, even, if they're maybe working extra hours to do that, and maybe we're not getting, 100% paid for those extra few hours that we put into that project. But
Right.
they're really looking to put, take pride in the work that they're doing.
Sure.
And I think that takes kind of a special mindset. Anyone can kind of say that,
Right.
but there's, I think it's a certain type of person that actually follows through on that type.
So you like the idea of having essentially a group of entrepreneurs working for you?
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty.
Does that make you nervous though? To sometimes you have someone who's an entrepreneur, might have had their own website or even their own side business. Does it make you nervous that they might leave at some point, or how do you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely always a possibility, but I think if we keep things interesting and we keep growing and we keep improving as a company at a pretty fast pace, which we've been able to do, I think we like to think we keep the right people around who stay interested. So.
Sure, because I have a fair amount of employees, and it's great to. We like to hire people as well that are smarter than me, better than me, and better than even some of our peers. And when I look at their backgrounds and some of the things they're doing, I've had some people come in and say, "Oh, well, I'm doing this on the side and this," and it makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that, but
especially in your world, because you always say when these tech companies, these guys come up with an idea at a tech company, they leave, and before you know it,
absolutely. There's definitely I don't think as much loyalty as there should be in the tech industry. There's a lot of turnover. People are, the offers are getting ridiculous for developers, especially from some of these big tech companies, so they can just jump ship to another better offer. But I think what we want to do is build a team that everyone, is really happy to work for, and once they realize how hard it is to build a similar team like that, they might realize, hey, like, yes, I could maybe do something on my own, but I'm going to have to do a ton of, hard, heavy lifting work to get that same team that we already have in place right now. So why not stick to the situation that we have? So,
all right, that makes sense.
There's always definitely, it's definitely a little bit of a worry, but I think as long as we keep everyone happy as we can, we just have to do our best. So.
Again, I wasn't planning on going down this road, but I'm just interested in it. So, what do you do to keep your employees happy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question as well, because we are kind of a bootstrap startup. We started with basically zero capital, just some little bit of capital that I had myself. So we don't have like the crazy tech funding that you get from these, like, I guess, VC-backed companies. So we have to be a little bit creative in some ways. I mean, just keeping the environment as fun as possible, being flexible with hours. We're not really strict if someone's coming in at 10:30 versus 9:30. As long as their work is getting done, we're not going to necessarily punish them for coming in at certain hours. So,
flexibility is key.
Flexibility, I think, is key to offset. Maybe not necessarily having the most competitive salary for the market. And then, some of the other things that we try and do. We do have health insurance for a small startup. We're always working on newer, kind of more exciting projects. I think we're growing pretty quickly, so it's like everything we're doing is kind of building up to something more pretty fast. So I think there's some excitement around that. So
people like being around that stuff, the startup envallment, essentially.
Yeah, I actually read a pretty interesting article. The tech market obviously does have high salaries, but Wall Street has higher salaries.
Right.
And there's actually more tech satisfaction in jobs in the tech industry because they're proud of building something more tangible that they can go to the website or use whatever they built.
Right.
Whereas some of these other positions, maybe they do have higher salaries, but you're not necessarily getting to use whatever you're working on.
Right. You're not building stuff and just being able to show people stuff. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Some of these websites people can show. We're actually going to be launching one of our biggest sites that we've ever worked on, which we're pretty excited about, Wine Enthusiast Magazine. So it's a pretty exciting site to be like, hey, when you go look up wine reviews, you might see the site that we built.
Wine Enthusiast Magazine. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. So I own a vodka, so I didn't know if you know. I don't know if you know that, but we'll have to talk.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to.
You should make sure it's reviewed on their website.
I'm gonna. Yeah, I think I might know somebody that might be able to help me with that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting. That's great. Now, in your business, obviously, it's a technology-based business. What do you find is the most effective way to market? Now, I know that you market towards businesses themselves, but I think you do a
Yeah.
little bit of like consumer stuff too, right? Or
Yeah. Well, no, we're pretty much, business to business
Okay.
in terms of only providing, business services to other businesses.
Okay.
As far as marketing ourselves, our website has actually been a pretty big driver of
Which is-
business, which is growwithtrellis.com.
Okay.
It's all 3 words.
Right.
It can be a little bit confusing, but yeah, so that, we focus pretty heavily on our blog. We actually got ranked or cited in like a top 25 small business blog in the United States.
Okay.
So, we've been
That must have helped.
Yeah, it definitely helped, but it kind of just shows that we've been building up a pretty strong traction in the content marketing space. So I think.
So is content marketing key to get people there?
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
content marketing and search engine optimization. So we have a pretty strong background in search engine optimization and content marketing. So
How do you come up with the content?
For me, it's just not a problem. I have probably way too many ideas that I can find the time to write. So the ideas really aren't the problem. I just, I read a lot of blogs, constantly reading other sites, articles, and topics, and I work with so many different businesses. I see so many different problems that it just leads to ideas. For instance, a random topic is sometimes they're kind of like thought-provoking topics that aren't even necessarily, you can't prove it. So, for instance, like why e-commerce is going to be necessary for your business in 2020.
Right.
So it's 5 years from now. It's pretty hard to say what's going to happen in 5 years. But
Right.
given the trajectory of e-commerce and how almost everything is becoming digital in some nature of making a purchase to some capacity.
Right.
You can kind of get those thought-provoking articles. So I think we kind of break down the different content that we create. So we have, those kind of like opinion articles that, almost anyone could write. And then we have more like tutorial type articles, which
Sure.
might be like, or blog posts, if you will, that are like, how to leverage the WordPress software. So that's one of the software that we use. So it's
Right.
like much more technical, explaining basically how this software works or how some specific thing works.
So you're essentially providing free advice to people out there,
Yeah.
and they may come to you and then eventually purchase your services.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a big part of it is just the search engine optimization benefits from content marketing. I mean,
Right.
Google's definitely looking for sites that have a pretty strong content marketing, outreach, I guess, if
Sure.
you will. So if you're constantly writing blogs, you're going to start to get ranked higher for the keywords that are in that content.
Right.
There's a lot more to it than that. It's not it's
No, I
tough to
bet.
explain search engine optimization in like a couple minutes.
Right.
But it's definitely had a big impact. So, for instance, we're ranked number 1 for Magento Boston, even ahead of some big competitors who are much, much bigger than we are,
Right.
which is one of the other software we use. Magento is the e-commerce software that we use. So search engine optimization kind of tied in with the content marketing hand in hand. That's really driven a lot of business. But that's not the only method. I mean, I think networking, partnerships, events is probably number 2 behind our website, or equally as important to us. So, meeting people like yourself, you never know. You might have a friend who
Right.
owns a business that needs something that we can help them with, or we run the Boston e-commerce meetup. It's a new meetup we started. So we're trying to kind of get our name out there in any way that we can, really, which is like events is a pretty strong way to do that. So
I like it. This one is a big one, I think, with entrepreneurs. You seem like a very dynamic and upbeat guy. Running a startup, especially a startup in your world that you didn't have any VC, it sounds like.
Nope.
What do you do outside of the office to handle stress?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So my uncle was like the 5th or 6th employee at a company called Software.com in the 90s. So he was like the peak of the tech boom and kind of got that luckiness of making making a lot of money in the tech
Right.
boom. And one of his advice to me when I first started was to stay in shape. And
Right.
I did not follow his advice as well as I should have. And I've actually been making a huge effort in the last year or so, 6 months, to get back in shape as to where I was, kind of post-college, that
Right.
kind of time. So I would say working out and just staying in shape and eating healthy is probably the most important thing to me, because if I don't do that, I don't think I could sustain what I'm doing, to be honest, at all.
Right, you won't be able to function. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And what do you do? Do you run? Do you do weights?
I play
whatever?
basketball.
Yeah,
Basketball
yeah.
is the number one thing for
Yeah.
me. I'll definitely lift weights,
Yeah.
but it's kind of secondary.
Yeah.
It's not the most fun thing to
Right.
me, but I'll just, I'll do it.
Right. All right, basketball. I like that. All right.
I played basketball in high school, so it helps a little bit.
Okay, great. Now, if you could finish this sentence, I'd appreciate it. If my company lacks blank, then we will not succeed.
I think ethics is a pretty big one. I think we definitely take pride in the work that we do, and we're in a industry in which there's a lot of like mistrust because anyone can. There's not a big barrier to entry. Anyone can all of a sudden be a web design company, a digital marketing company. You don't have to get a law degree, right?
Sure.
And so I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think us having kind of, feeling really prideful in the work that we do, that we know we put in the dollar value that we got paid plus, a bunch more back to the customer in
Sure.
terms of the hard work that we put in. I think that's important to us, and I think will lead to more success. And I think the companies that, maybe they get away with some shady things, and they might make some upfront money, but I think long term that's not going to work.
Give me an example of a shady thing in something in your industry.
Well, blackout SEO is a common one.
What's that mean?
It's not as pervasive as it used to be, but it used to kind of be able to game the search engines.
Okay.
It's called blackout SEO.
Yeah.
It's not as common anymore, but essentially you could run even programs that would link back to your sites, which is part of Google's algorithm, how many other sites are linking to you. So it kind of there was all these different kind of tactics where you'd spam other websites' comments to get your link in the comments back
Sure.
to your website and things like that. But Google's gotten pretty smart and they figured that out pretty quickly now.
Okay.
But there's, it's still out there for sure.
So,
that's one example. Another is a lot of companies don't say they outsource their web development or their software, but they do.
Right. Yeah, usually to like Russia or something.
Yeah, we do it in-house, and maybe they have like one guy in-house, but they're really outsourcing like 90% of the work to...
So do you do it in-house, or do you outsource it and tell people you're outsourcing it?
We do it in-house.
Right.
We do have two third-party teams that we will work with from time to time. It's pretty rare, but they're very, very qualified software engineers, and they're not cheap, even though they are overseas. They're $45 an hour.
Right.
When you break it down, it's almost like paying $100,000 a year for someone. So, but we pretty much do everything in-house. I'd say 95% is within our own software team, and sometimes we'll use some third parties, but pretty rarely.
That's great. I like the answer ethics, because when I look at the web and marketing on the web, I call it the wild, wild west.
It is. It really is.
and we market supplements and books and things like that on the internet, and we have a lawyer specifically. All he does all day long is pulling people down because they're constantly just using our trademarks or our copyrights, and they're writing they're creating these phony fake websites. It drives me insane. I can't believe these companies are still in business.
Oh my God, yeah.
Eventually they won't be.
They eventually won't be, but they can stick around for a couple of years. They might change their name. Who knows what they do? And the other day I just saw another post, and they used the graphic that I'd worked with my graphic designer to create for one of our blog posts.
Right.
And it was clearly our graphic,
Right.
and they had just
grabbed
taken it and used it on their site. And it's one of those things. It's not worth it to me that call a lawyer and tell them to track those people down. It's just one stupid blog post, but it's just, they don't even care. They just clearly threw it up. And
that's really frustrating to me.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to young people in the workforce? And I always preface this with, I see the millennial generation or the 20-somethings, the Y generation, whatever you want to call it. I feel like, and I'm not the only one, I think, where this generation feels as though they should be entitled to a certain level of success without doing anything. That's why I asked this question is, what would you give to those people out there on what to do and how to grow as an individual in a business or even an entrepreneur? It's a long question.
No, I think there's definitely some truth to that. I think our generation. I'm pretty much part of that generation. I'm pretty young.
I was going to say, you always say you definitely,
But I think there's a lot of misinformation. There's definitely people who are maybe entitled in this generation, but there's also a lot of people like myself and my business partner who honestly puts on way longer hours than I do. I don't know how he does it, to be honest. And so I think there's kind of that mix of people on both sides of the spectrum. But I would say that really it doesn't matter, especially I think in this generation, we're younger so we know technology better. That's definitely not true. I mean, yes, obviously we grew up with it and we're familiar with social media, but just because you use it does not mean you're an expert.
Right.
And so I think that it's important that our generation understands that no matter what, hard work is the only way you'll be successful.
Right.
And just being smarter than someone else doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you still have to put in the hours to be successful. I don't really care what you're doing in any industry, any job, and I think think you'd probably agree with that.
No, I agree with it. I agree with it 100%. And for the people that are listening and watching, and again, I hate to continue to pick on this generation. You said you're actually a part of it, but you're right. I found that the successful people that I've met, like yourself, really it comes down to one thing, and then that's working your ass off. Like someone said to me recently, you got to work hard. I mean, there's all these other things: work harder, work smarter. There's all these other things, but if you don't put in the work, it's just not going to happen, and you're not going to get what you feel as though you deserve.
Absolutely not.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, so that's what I would say. I mean, just because we're younger and we maybe are more tech savvy, but doesn't
and just
matter.
because you're smarter also doesn't mean shit,
No,
right? I mean,
it
it doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
No,
How many smart guys do you know that aren't doing anything?
No, absolutely, a lot. And actually, that's a good. We definitely have worked with some really smart people, and to be honest, they didn't work out necessarily because I don't think they had the consistent work ethic. Maybe someone who wasn't as maybe naturally as smart as them,
right?
But he just worked harder and put in the consistent work, and it was more valuable over time. Yeah, and I think you'll see that true of a lot of different professions. So
I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad you said it. Can you give me, our viewers, and our listeners a secret strategy or business technique that you have used that makes you more efficient? And the reason why I asked that question is, one, you're in a startup environment and you're growing, like you said, quickly. I have found that one of the most difficult things to do in business is implementation, but it's more of implementation of an idea or a mechanism efficiently. What do you do? Is there one thing? Do you work together with your team that says we do this, and this at all times? What is it?
I'm not sure if there's one secret thing that we do, but I think we are very good at just getting things done quickly, and we'll just do something as simple as just organizing when we're in crunch time, and that happens all the time, we got to launch a website or whatever it is, we'll just literally go up on the whiteboard, put everything, we have whiteboards up across our entire office basically, and basically put like your name, everyone's name, and all the tasks that they need to do,
right,
and just write them all off.
Calling each other out, basically, right?
Yeah, and then, cross them off. It's kind of called the Scrum. It's actually kind of they make fun of it in the show Silicon Valley, but it's actually pretty useful.
I love that show. It's such a great show.
Yeah, it's a great show, but it actually comes into play. It's a very useful tactic. And we use a project management software that actually is like more, I guess more official in the sense that it's all in the software, but just simply writing it up on the whiteboard and seeing everyone cross off what they've been doing almost has like I think a stronger effect in getting the work done faster.
It makes you more accountable, right? I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you found that people cross something off and it wasn't done properly?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to review work, and so, they'll say it's, someone will say it's crossed out, but that doesn't mean it's 100% done. We might still have someone have to review and test the work that they've done. So that's, as long as it's kind of known that that's part of the process, I think it's okay.
And do you do that because sometimes when you hire people and you rely on people and certain roles and jobs, and so you learn as a business owner or an entrepreneur to kind of rely on that, and then when it's not done, it's got to be frustrating. Is it you who goes back and makes sure that that's done?
It can definitely be frustrating. It's not usually myself. I would say our project manager is pretty heavily involved in all of that. So it's usually myself or him or the our head of operations, who's my business partner, who essentially just make sure everything's running as smoothly as possible.
Okay.
And so it's probably the two of them. I'll definitely be involved, but I would say it's more so the project manager because his job is to get the project done. And, if someone says that they did something and he goes and checks the website and it's not working, he's going to go back to them and say, hey, you got to finish this. So.
Have you seen that? I'm just picture that. Have you seen this? There's a company actually in Massachusetts, I believe. It's called Idea Paint. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I have seen that actually.
I bought it. It's kind of cool, and we had it in one of our offices, but it's not perfect, but it's cool. Like, you do your whole office and essentially whiteboard.
Okay.
Yeah, so you get the white walls here. You can paint it in the whole office.
And then you can wash off the paint, or
no, you wash like the paint becomes a whiteboard. It's called Idea Paint.
I see.
Yeah,
so the
it's
paint
pretty cool.
essentially becomes the whiteboard.
Yeah, you have to put. I think you have to put too many coats on though, because it actually picks up on the little bumps in the drywall. But it's still pretty cool. Like, you could paint your whole office in a giant whiteboard.
Yeah, the only reason I know of is the people that we worked with went to Babson, and I know the guy who started that went to Babson. So.
Yeah, that's funny. Now, in this day and age, what do you think is the best form of communication? What I mean by that is the best form of communication with your customers. How do you communicate?
I definitely think email is still the best way.
Okay. All right.
Everyone, I'm sure there's a million different ways that people think is the best way. I mean, obviously, phone and GoToMeeting is a meeting conference tool that we use. So if you have like multiple people on the meeting and they're not all in the same room, it's a great tool for that. But ultimately, email is the most straightforward, simple way I think for us to communicate with customers and to get things done that way. We use an internal communication tool called HipChat. We may be moving to a company called Slack, which is it's basically the same thing as HipChat. It's just there's some benefits supposedly to Slack over HipChat, but basically it's almost like an internal chat room. So I would say customers email for sure, but internally I would say having an internal chat room is pretty valuable.
Do you find sometimes that the message can get miscommunicated via email because you maybe from your choice of words, there isn't that voice inflection. Sometimes you have to maybe pick up the phone after an email is sent. Because someone like me, I'll read an email sometimes and I misinterpret it and I go crazy, and then does that happen sometimes?
I'm sure it definitely happens, and it can be a little frustrating because you just don't know what they're thinking unless you talk to them, so you just got to follow up by phone. But I mean, unfortunately, at least in our line of work, because we're dealing with so many different people, prospective leads, we might have 20 ongoing projects at a time with different customers. We just have to have something that's pretty quick to communicate with, and email is a pretty quick way to kind of say, here's the information, here's what we've done, or whatever's going on, and then hopefully they'll get back to you pretty quickly. You can attach documents as well.
Do you, if you know it's an important message, do you step back and look at it and review it and say, if I was the person receiving this, how would I interpret this sometimes? If it's a critical type thing?
Definitely. If it's a really critical type thing where it's maybe going to be a tough conversation with a customer, like, hey, look, we tried to do something, or we're going to have to look into plan B because plan A is not working, or something like that, which is obviously a critical type thing. We might have like the team look it over, to be honest, like the main people working on the project all read the email before it gets sent out.
That's good. I'm because sometimes again I've been the recipient of emails and the person who sent it that isn't what they meant to say. And
And then you got to get on the phone with them.
Right. Now, if you could leave our viewers and listeners with one piece of advice in business, again, we've talked about, you talked about ethics, which is important, and hard work, but is there one thing that you could give a broad thing to pretty much anybody that they can do that would be effective, that would help them in business? What would it be?
I think it would be really properly doing your research. I think a lot of companies, they're so misinformed, and if you really just take the time to Google things and read the comments, read all the little things that you can find about whatever you're trying to figure out, you could get a lot of, the hard work done rather than maybe overpaying a consultant or a company like us because you didn't do your due diligence to really figure out what you should be doing. So that goes for anything. I mean, choosing a new software, figuring out a vendor for your website, for your marketing, or whatever it is. I think a lot of companies just fail to do the proper research in terms of what they should budget, what they should really choose is whatever they're trying to do.
That makes sense. Now, we started out on the beginning. I talked a little bit about your company and your website, and I kind of screwed it up. So I want to fix that. And so, Isaiah, tell us a little bit about what exactly Trellis does, how it helps people, how it helps businesses.
At its simplest terms, I would say we are an e-commerce and web design agency. So we will implement the Magento e-commerce software, which is pretty much the most popular, widely used enterprise e-commerce software. So, a business that's, maybe looking to start their e-commerce side of the business or already have one and looking to kind of take it to the next level will upgrade basically their entire site or implement Magento and the entire e-commerce website. We also do that for non-e-commerce websites using the WordPress software, which is actually 25% of all websites are built in WordPress. A lot of people don't know that. So one of my other blog posts is why you need to start thinking about your website as a software, not a website, because it really is at this point basically a software. And so,
is that because WordPress is easier for guys like me that don't really understand it to use? Because I know that we use it here.
Yeah. So what WordPress allows you to do, and same with Magento, is it allows you to do, basically improve your website without actually being able to program and code.
Right.
So you could write a blog post. If we set up a quality website for you guys, for instance, and we set up the right way, you could definitely write blog posts and certain new pages or new pieces of content without having to code at all.
Sure.
Basically almost like kind of like Word document. If you have Word document level skills, you can basically write new content with WordPress. And with Magento, it's more on the e-commerce side, so like adding products and things like that. You can do that without any coding expertise.
Right.
So it gives businesses the ability to basically grow their website without necessarily having internal programmers.
So when you're done building someone's website, and you kind of pass it off to them, is there, are you done with the customer then, or is there a constant maintenance?
Oh, absolutely. We definitely like to have the ongoing relationships.
Yeah.
We can't guarantee that it always works out and that's what happens, but yeah, we like to have an ongoing maintenance relationship and to be constantly improving their website. And we take something that we really want to become the leaders in is I think there's this problem with a lot of businesses in that they rebuild their website every 3 or 4 years and they kind of let it die, if you will, and then 3 or 4 years later, like, oh my God, we're so far behind our competitors. Now we got to rebuild our website.
Right.
But I think now with the technology like WordPress and Magento, you could essentially just be constantly improving your website. So in 3 years, you never necessarily rebuilt your website. You literally just have a new website because of all the improvements that you've made over the 3 years. It's like that. What's that metaphor of the ship? If you piece it together one at a time, eventually it's a whole new ship because you know.
Haven't heard that one, but I like it.
But it's the same concept with your website. I think we absolutely want to be maintaining, and so we do also provide some level of marketing services. We're not nearly as staffed up on the marketing side as we are on the software and design side, but we do kind of like provide marketing strategy in tandem with the ongoing maintenance of the website, so that they're hopefully improving their website and growing the website to be more successful.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for being here. It was really interesting to me, again, because I'm not really that tech savvy, although I try to be, and although there are some people actually even out there that are really, really good at it and actually probably understand it much better. But you did a great job of kind of, telling me exactly what you did. Again, my name is Michael Alden. I'm here with Isaiah Bollinger of Trellis. GrowWithTrellis.com, again, an e-commerce web design agency. If you're looking to improve your website, if you're looking to really kind of get your company out there on the web and you're not really sure what to do, go to GrowWithTrellis.com and they can kind of show you what to do. Isaiah, again, I want to thank you for being my guest. It was really, really interesting, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again another time.
Yeah, no, it was really great to have you, for you guys to invite me over.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Michael Alden. This is the Alden Report, and we'll see you next time.